Good morning, everybody. Good morning, friends. We're going to get back to it on this little Datsun 720 today, and I'll bring you guys up to date on some things that I've done with it over the last couple of days. And also, if you all wouldn't mind, subscribe to me. It won't hurt, I promise. And if you feel like it, hit that notification bell as well. And when I do manage to upload some new content, you'll be one of the first to know. So let's run down and take a look at a couple of the new updates. Well, here's one brand new thing. We've got the fuel hooked up. And yes, this pump is pumping. It's pulling through this filter. And that was kind of some good news. I was a little bit concerned about that. Other things over here, I managed to get that heat shield off of the side of this manifold that was still there that we're not going to be using. And next thing will be to get this pipe off of here. I think what I'm going to do is cut this tube off of the fitting that it's on down underneath here, and then just use an impact wrench on that big nut because nothing else seems to be working too well to get it loose. Tried heat and P-blaster and heat and P-blaster and cranking on it with a pipe wrench. Nothing's going on. So that's kind of one of the updates of some things going on right now. And the other thing that we'll be looking at next is probably going to be pulling off that clutch master today. And other thing is, I was thinking when it did start the other day, the idle was pretty rough on this poor thing. What idle there was. So I'm thinking this exhaust might be plugged. As many years as it had been sitting, I just got a feeling there's something up inside the tailpipe on this thing. So we're going to yank that exhaust off on it too. So I think first order of business is going to be, let's go ahead and see if we can get some work done on removing that tube that comes up from the exhaust manifold that used to go into the air cleaner. We'll get that dude off there and get that plugged, and then move on to the clutch master next. So before I get started popping off this clutch master, I thought I'd mention on this big old fitting coming off that exhaust manifold, yeah, I put a pipe wrench on it. I used a real nice piece of pipe with a super thick wall on it, and all I was doing was chewing up that fitting that's down there. And because I really don't want to cause myself any more trouble than I've already got, I'm going to stop with that, move these off to one side, and we'll just cut that pipe off and then get a big socket up on there with the impact wrench and go at it that way. So with this clutch master, up underneath the dash, there's a rod that connects to the clutch pedal. It's just got this pin that goes through there and one of these E-clips that secures it on. And that's everything pretty much from the inside. So that's all done. Taking advice of another guy who happens to post an occasional video on YouTube, I put a lot of P-blaster on this fitting coming off the side of this clutch master. Lots and lots of juice, lots of rocking it around with this wrench, which is a 10 millimeter. I guess that's everything on most of these imports. And it just wasn't coming loose, so I did have to put a vice grip on it to get it off. And it came off pretty easy once I did that. So we're just going to go ahead and pop this line off of here. There's 2 bolts on this thing that hold it up onto the firewall in here. They were no problem coming loose. They're probably grateful to be loose after all these years. And we're just about there with this. When you have the cap off this thing and you hit the clutch pedal on it, this thing bubbles what kind of looks like just a chocolate milkshake. So I'm not exactly sure how to take that. I don't know if there's been some water in this system at some point or what the deal is with it, but I know it's not I know that's not good. So let's get back in here now. And I think I'm going to need to grab a wobble bit to get on that bottom side. There we go. Well, there's not a lot of range of motion there with that. Hopefully that nut comes loose enough to spin off, and it did by hand pretty darn quick. And I'm going to grab a wobble bit real fast. While I'm walking away to grab that bit, I thought I'd mention to everybody, as I hooked up that fuel and crank on this thing, the oil pressure gauge started reading out. We've got 45 pounds of oil pressure. So I don't know if it just needed some push behind it after all these years to finally get itself working, but it started working. I thought that's pretty cool. So I did order oil pressure sending unit, so now we'll just have a spare for the time when this one lets go, which it will. They all do. I mean, this one's, I'm pretty sure it's not the original one to the truck because the wiring sort of says so when you look at it. Looks like somebody has cobbled in some wiring, and I don't know what's under the electrical tape, but I know I'm not going to pull the tape off and have a look until I absolutely have to. And maybe I should have. Maybe that's part of the reason it wasn't reading out properly. I don't know. But sometimes I kind of like to leave well enough alone. And we're starting to get fluid everywhere. Doggone it. Because I've already got that line off. Probably should have left it on for a little bit, but oh well. It's off now. And this nut is almost all the way off, so this thing's going to be out and laying on the ground in a minute anyway. Figured I'd mention this part came from Rock Auto. It's amazing that people like Rock Auto and a few other places out there still actually have parts for these old trucks. It kind of blows my mind, honestly. I guess there's still enough of us working on them that they figure, what the heck, they may as well keep the parts in stock. So grateful to them for that, and hopefully it's going to be the right part. We'll see here in a little bit. We'll get this one off. We'll lay the two side by side and see how they stack up. And boy, am I glad that didn't fall all the way down. So that's our old one, and it's, oh, you know what? It might actually work, and my problem might be on the clutch slave. So, that's interesting. Gonna have to take a minute and think about that and decide what I want to do with this, whether I want to put that new one in or not. I probably should, because this one is really, it's rusted. Parts are rusted on it and everything. So let's take a minute here and think about this. All right, well, let's make a comparison of what we got versus the old one that was in here. There's some instructions in there. We'll take a look at that in a minute. So, physical wise, other than adjusting the length of this rod, I mean, golly, you can't ask for something that looks more identical than that. Wow, I'm super impressed with that. So I think we'll take a minute. We'll get this rod adjusted up the length. Actually, let me spin this around so you can see. If you're not familiar with this, these rods have a nut on here, so you can actually spit. Well, let's just adjust it while we're here. Just an eyeball will probably do with it. And yeah, that's close to adjusted. The adjustment, don't look back here when you're adjusting these. Look up here where these holes are going through here, which is where this is actually going to sit up in the cab on the back of the clutch pedal. That's really what you should be looking at. So yeah, that dude's adjusted. So let's take a minute. We'll stick it in. I guess the only decision I'm going to have to make is, do I use this original Nabco Japanese cap, or do I use this brand new cap? Man, I hate having to make decisions like that, because I sure would like the original Japanese part on here, but that's a new cap. So we'll take a minute, think about that, and get reset to put this thing back in. Well, as it turns out, the decision of whether to use the cap that came on it or the original Nabco cap was made for me, because this cap that came on it is busted. So the Nabco cap goes back on, and that's cool. That's fine by me. I'd prefer to have it that way anyway. So let's get this guy started. What I'm going to do is go in from the other side and make sure that rod's lining up where I want it to line up inside around the clutch pedal, because that's kind of a little bit of a booger to get on afterwards if it's not in the right spot. And we are in the right spot. So let's go ahead and slide that all the way on. Get this top nut started on here. Of course, I'm losing a little bit of paint down in here. I'm sure it has nothing to do with the fact that there's fluid, compressible fluids all over the place in here. So that never takes paint off of anything. Sure would be nice if the manufacturers would fix that one day and give us a compressible fluid for these systems that wouldn't eat the paint off of stuff. But I guess I'm just grateful we got power brakes in the first place, and I probably shouldn't be grousing about that. So a couple of nuts here, get this tightened back down, and we'll get some new fluid in here. I'll get down and bleed it on the slave side. And the clutch, this thing has the hard line runs across here to the other side and all the way down to a clutch slave in there, and there's a nipple on there to bleed that. So we'll go ahead and do that here in just a little bit, and then we'll see how this thing's gonna work. That's pretty good. Don't need to torque it down all the way. It's not gonna fly off of there, I'm relatively sure. Although up here in this area where I live, I'm sure many of you have heard of the drag and drive events that are all over the country. We have one in this area also called the Redwood Rally. It hits 5 drag strips. And I thought, you know, why not? Let's take this whole thing out, make a pass down a drag strip with it. It should be a solid, I don't know, solid 19 or 20 second vehicle, and that's pretty interesting for people. I mean, that'll give them plenty of time to get up and stretch and go get a beverage of their choice, come back, sit down. I mean, the event's all about making a pass. It's, you know, if you want to go out there and you want to run it to win, knock yourself out, have fun with that. I think that's cool. I love drag racing. But, you know, just to get something like this out there and get it up in people's faces and have them look at it and say, well, that's something we haven't seen out here before. That's kind of cool. That would just make my day. So I think we're going to try that next year. I got a hold of the organizers of the event to ask them, where in the heck would a truck like this fit in? What class should this thing run? Super responsive people. Nice guy named Jesse, who I believe is one of the 2 main organizers of the event, got back to me just within a day or so of me sending the email in. He said, oh yeah, we'd really like to have you. So definitely bring your bring your rig, and he said he'd get back to me in a few days with some information on what class he thinks the truck would run in. It's really not altered. I mean, it's got the Weber carburetor on it. It's otherwise stock, although I am going to pull off the catalytic converter and muffler and make sure that's not all restricted, and then just put a muffler back on it. Thinking about even a header for this guy. I mean, why not? They're out there. I understand the engine compartment will run a little bit hotter like that, and I guess I'm okay with that, but you know, what the heck? It'll be fun. So that clutch master's on. I'm going to go ahead and put that pin back on inside, and we'll get some fluid in this thing and bleed it and see how this clutch operates. One quick note before we get to putting some fluid in that clutch master and bleeding it. There's these little clips that go on these tailgate hinges on these old trucks. They hold this wire here into the mechanism. I believe they also go in the doors on the door lock mechanism. Huge shout out to Nissan. These parts are still in stock with Nissan, so they've been using them since at least the late 70s. Still using them, still got them stocked. Thanks, Nissan, for letting me fix this tailgate. And now on to that clutch master. All right, time to fill this clutch master and do some bleeding on it. Okay. Get into a fresh jug here. And let's see if I can further get this stuff all over the paint. Be smarter to go find a funnel, but we're here now. All right. All right, let's give this clutch pedal one nice little gentle push. And I can't tell if we're seeing any bubbles out here or not. So I'm going to take a look, and well, there's definitely bubbles up here in it. Give it a few more pushes. Might have to get my clutch bleeding assistant out here in a little bit and do that, or put the suction device down on the clutch slave, and we'll just bleed it down that way. All right, starting to feel a little bit of resistance in that clutch pedal though, and that's what we're looking for. Oh yeah, the level of it's gone down a bit, so we'll add a touch more. And let's do all that again. Bleeding any hydraulic system is just, it's a chore. It takes time. You're definitely gonna get all that air out of there though. No air. Air is bad in any of these systems. Give it a few more hits here. See what we got in this master again. Okay. It's just in slightly the wrong spot to be able to push this darn pedal and see it at the same time. I think I'm going to run into the shop here real fast, grab a length of some pipe, and see if I can reach around the edge of all that and push that pedal while I'm watching and seeing what's going on. All right, here's a good candidate. Let's see what we can do. We're on the clutch pedal. Yeah, we got a couple of bubbles coming up through. Yeah, I'm gonna have to get my trusty assistant out here. So I may move on to the next task, and then I'll report back on how this bleeding went. Right. So it's time to get under here and get the exhaust off of this thing. I just really want to make sure it's not plugged, because I'm super nervous it's plugged, and that's why the thing's running as lousy as it is. So let's get some bolts off here and see what we got going on. Wow, those dudes are stuck. Well, after pulling this muffler off, I could hear a lot of stuff rattling around in here. And just by judging from what I'm seeing on this can, I think this is probably the original muffler that was on it. Boy, does it have a lot of crunchy stuff rolling around in there. So we're going to open this can up and see what all's in it. Well, let's get a closer look. There's a ton of carbon on this pipe, so it's probably been running a little rich. I don't know what kind of media they originally put in this thing, but looking down the input tube on this thing, there's man, it's just like it is stopped up. I don't think that's the end of the tube. I guess it could be. I'll have to probe down in there with something, but there's some crap in there. So at least, if anything, we're going to put a brand new muffler on this thing and quiet it down a little bit. Well, folks, runs a little better now. Still needs timing done, but holy crap, this is good. Well, she's not a smoker either. That's really nice to see, especially with 219,000 miles on this odometer. Oil pressure's kind of floating around, but pretty darn happy with it. Still needs some timing. I think this distributor's not in quite right. It's a few degrees out. It's a little boggy when you touch the gas. I just loosened the distributor and spun it as far one way as I could, and it got better and better. I put a timing light on it the other day, and looked like it was pretty far off. So I think we're gonna have to find TDC on this thing, pull the distributor, drop it back in properly, time it from there. Probably some new plugs and wires also. But this thing is definitely back from the dead. Okay, the next thing will be to try to get out the old water temp sensor that's stuck right in the front part of this intake manifold and put this new one in. That particular one, when I was pulling wiring apart to get the starter out, the whole back part of this thing actually came out of this whole insert that goes in there. So there's nothing left in there for water temp. So hopefully I can get that one out of there. I got a power steering pump bracket out of the way. There's a little bit of heat in the motor, and there's some P-blaster on it. So let's see if we can get this guy to bust loose. Man, I hope so, because there's no way to get a wrench down here on it at all. So let's see what we get. Yeah. It's going to come out. Now I just got to keep myself from burning my body off. So I'm going to walk over to the other side here, get some high temp Permatex, coat the threads of this new one, being careful to not get it where I'm going to get it inside the water jacket on this dude. So we don't want that. Here we go. A little bit more. Run a bead of it all the way around here. Don't need a ton, but I do need more than I got out. Let's get that right there. You at least want a continuous line of it all the way around. And I got the removable kind because, you know, it's only a matter of time before this one is going to have to come back off and be replaced as well. So that one's out real quick so we don't lose all the coolant everywhere. New one's going to go in right easy. Oh, look at that. Not bad. And we're going to bust this off here. I'm going to need a deep well because I got to get over a terminal on there. Let's grab a deep well. Grab a socket wrench while we're on here. I'm not going to stick that back on with the impact. And I'm hoping for good things on this. Of course, we've had no water temp readout because this is off, obviously. Okay. We'll watch that for a minute for leaks. I got to figure out just where in the heck I laid the wiring for that too, I think. Yeah, that's it right there. No. Oh, we got to put a terminal on there. Look at this. So this old one, I don't think I can get this wiring up here far enough for everybody to see. But this old one is actually hard. It's a hardwire. This is the temperature sending part that actually came out of the whole thing. So I'm going to have to cut this off and add a terminal onto that. So let's look into doing that. All right, I grabbed out the terminal that we're going to need. So let's get that guy cut off. And there, it looks like there's a, I don't know, maybe it's a heat shield piece that is pushed over the outside of this. So I'm going to push it down on there a little ways. That's crazy that thing, I guess, you know, the truck's in 1981, that just busted off and the entire guts came out of that temperature sending unit. I've never seen that happen before where the whole thing would just separate and come out like that. Very odd. All right, so let's strip that wire and we'll get a terminal on it. It's not leaking. That's good. So I'm fairly confident that we're okay. I'm going to go ahead and hook this wiring up, and we'll get the bracket back in place. Look at that. Just like it was made for it. And we'll get the bracket back on and get that buttoned up. Then we'll move on to the next thing. Well, friends, I think we're going to say that's enough for this time on this little 720. We'll get after it again here in a few days. And as usual, if you'd feel like subscribing, hitting the notification bell, please do if you want to help an old guy out. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time.